Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ciphernoon. So we're gonna continue blazing forward. We're gonna start off by continuing learning HTML. So you can see here we have gotten 1/3 of the way through the course already, which is really amazing. If you're doing this on the pro version, you have like quizzes and projects and all this stuff, but we're just doing the free version together. So let's get moving, let's get started. Okay, prepping for HTML. Now that you've learned about some of the most common HTML elements, it's time to learn how to set up an HTML file. HTML files require certain elements to set up the document properly. You can let web browsers know that you are using HTML by starting your document with a document type declaration. The declaration looks like this. The declaration is an instruction, and it must be the first line of code in your HTML document. It tells the browser what type of document to expect, along with what version of HTML is being used in the document. For now, the browser will correctly assume that the HTML in doctype HTML is referring to HTML5, as it is the current standard. In the future, however, a new standard will override HTML5. To make sure your document is forever interpreted correctly, always include doctype HTML at the very beginning of your HTML documents. Lastly, HTML code is always saved in a file with the .html extension. So what's interesting about this is that when I started learning HTML, one, I don't think we really did this doctype HTML declaration, and also two, it was either it would be .html or .htm. I don't know if .htm still works. It probably does. They probably grandfathered that in, but they are obviously not encouraging use of that anymore. I don't know what the difference was because at the time I was 11, so I was just like making Sailor Moon fan sites. I was just like, oh, HTML is cool. Anyways, okay. Add the doctype declaration as the very first line of code at the top of index.html file. So here on the console you can see this is the file, index.html. So we're going to add that. Perfect, we're geniuses, keep going. The HTML tag. The doctype HTML declaration provides the browser with two pieces of information, the type document and the HTML version to expect, but doesn't actually add any HTML structure or content. To create HTML structure and content, we must add opening and closing HTML tags after declaring doctype HTML. Got it. Anything between the opening HTML and the closing HTML tags will be interpreted as HTML code. Without these tags, it's possible that browsers could incorrectly interpret your HTML code. Alright, so add the opening and closing HTML tags below the doctype HTML tag. Alright, so below this one, we got open HTML, and then we're going to add close HTML. Bum, bum, bum. Run it up. Yes. Okay, the head. So far you've done two things to set up the file properly. Declare to the browser that your code is HTML with doctype. Add the HTML element HTML that will contain the rest of your code. We have added these elements to the Brown Bears page you previously created. That's cool. So this is our page from before we were working on. Now let's also give the browser some information about the page itself. We can do this by adding a head element. Remember the body tag? The head element is part of this HTML metaphor. It goes over our body element, so it goes before the body even starts. The head element contains metadata for a web page. Metadata is information about the page that isn't displayed directly on the web page, so you don't see it when you open up the web page here. You won't see it here. Unlike the information inside of the body tag, the metadata in the head is information about the page itself. You'll see an example of this in the next exercise. The opening and closing head tags typically appear as the first item after your HTML tag. Open head tag, close head tag. Place the head element below the opening HTML tag. Awesome. Okay, so below the opening HTML tag, we're going to add open head, and then we're going to add closed. Perfect, let's keep going. Page titles. What kind of metadata about the web page can the head element contain? If you navigate the Codecademy catalog and look at the top of your browser, you'll notice the words catalog, line, or divider, I guess, Codecademy, which is the title of the web page. A browser's tab displays the title specified in the title tag. The title tag is always inside of the head tag. If we were to open a file containing the HTML code in the example above, the browser would display the words My Coding Journal in the title bar or in the tab's title. Awesome. Add brown bears as the title of your web page by using the title element. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the title of your page in the smaller browser to the right. We'll show you what it would look like in the next exercise. Okay, so we know that the title element goes inside the head element, so we're just gonna add it in. And the title is brown bears, and then we're gonna do a close title tag. Perfect. All right, let's keep going. Right here, this is where it would appear. So where does the title appear? Good work. Unfortunately, the browser panel used by the Codecademy environment does not have a title bar, so the brown bear title you wrote in the previous exercise will not be displayed. Outside the Codecademy environment, however, your title would appear as depicted in the diagram to the right. So far, we have learned about doctype HTML, the declaration specifying the version of HTML for the browser, the HTML tags that enclose all of your HTML code, the head tag that contains the metadata of a web page, such as its title. Next, you will learn about new types of elements that go inside the body. Great! Whoa there. I don't know what that was. Whoa there. Okay, linking to other web pages. One of the most powerful aspects of HTML and the internet is the ability to link to other web pages. You can add links to a web page by adding an anchor element. That's this one. And including the text of the link in between the opening and closing tags. This is a link to Wikipedia. Wait a minute. Technically, the link in the example above is incomplete. How exactly is the link above supposed to work if there's no URL that will lead users to the actual Wikipedia page? Spoiler, it won't work. The anchor element in the example above is incomplete without the href attribute. This attribute stands for hyperlink reference and is used to link to a path or the address to where a file is located, whether it is a file on your computer or another location. The paths provided to the href attribute are often URLs. There we go, that looks better. In the example above, the href attribute has been set to the value of the URL wikipedia.org. The example now shows the correct use of an anchor element. When reading technical documentation, you may come across the term hyperlink. Not to worry, this is simply the technical term for link. These terms are often used interchangeably. Great. So after the first paragraph, right above the heading that says species, so here's species, right here, so in here, add a link that says learn more. Don't add URLs just yet. Okay, so after the first paragraph, I guess here. Close it. I put it still in the paragraph tag. So I don't know if what it will say about that. Let's see. Did you add the link after the first paragraph ending in Himalayan brown bear? I did, but I put it in your paragraph tag. So let me move it down then. Yeah, I didn't like that. You can see it's concerned by what we're doing. Okay, let's try it again. Great, it likes that one better. Okay, so it wants it outside the paragraph tag. So add the following URL to the link. So we'll take that, copy it, Next. Opening links in a new window. Have you ever clicked on a link and observed the resulting web page open in a new browser window? If so, you can thank the A-element's target attribute. The target attribute specifies how a link should open. It's possible that one or more links on your web page link to an entirely different website. In that case, you may want users to read the linked website but hope that they return to your web page. This is exactly when the target attribute is useful. For a link to open in a new window, the target attribute requires a value of _blank. The target attribute can be added directly to the opening tag of the anchor element, just like the href attribute. So there is target blank right there in the opening anchor tag. In the example above, setting the target attribute to _blank instructs the browser to open the relevant Wikipedia page in a new window. In this exercise, we've used terminology open in a new window. It's likely that you are using a modern browser that opens up websites in new tabs rather than new windows. Before the advent of browsers with tabs, additional browser windows had to be opened to view more websites. The target blank attribute, when used in modern browsers, will open new websites in a new tab. Yeah, this was ridiculous. The inventing of tabs on browsers is like amazing. It's so amazing, because otherwise you would just have like 5 instances, 5 windows running, and they would like collect at the bottom of your screen. Whoops. They would collect at the bottom of your screen, and then you'd have to like, and then eventually if you had like run out of space, they would collapse, and then you'd have to like pick one. You know, you click on the icon at the bottom for the browser, and then you have to like pick one that you wanted to see. It was really funny. Okay, so in the link that reads learn more, add the target attribute and set it to =blank. So that's our link right here. We're gonna go down here after the second quotations, and then we're gonna do target =_blank. Perfect. All right. Okay, linking to relative page. Thus far you've learned how to link to external web pages. Many sites also link to internal web pages like home, about, and contact. Before we learn how to link between internal pages, let's establish where our files are stored. When making multi-page static websites, web developers often store HTML files in the root directory or a main folder. It's a folder where all the files of your project are stored. It's a folder on the server, on the web host. You know, like a folder on your computer, but like it's a folder on the web host. As the size of the projects you create grows, you may use additional folders within the main project folder to organize your content. Yeah. So the example above shows 3 different files, about, contact, and index in one folder. It would actually look very similar to this. On the FTP program that you're using. The HTML files are often stored in the same folder as shown in the example above. If the browser is currently displaying index.html, it also knows that about.html and contact.html are in the same folder. Because the files are the same folder, we can link the web pages together using a relative path. This is a relative path. It is, well, I'll read this, and then if it needs more explanation or a summary, sometimes I do that. Okay, so in this example, the anchor tag is used with a relative path to link from the current HTML file to the contact.html file in the same folder. On the web page, contact will appear as the link. Great. So a relative path is a file name that shows a path to a local file, a file on the same website, such as .index.html, versus an absolute path, a full URL, like https:// which is stored in a different folder and like a completely different website. The ./ and .index.html tells the browser to look for the file in the current folder. Yeah, that / thing is new too. That was not something that I learned about when I did know about it when I started doing HTML, but it wasn't considered like, I don't think it was really, like, there are some things now that you do as a matter of protocol, like a standardized protocol. And back then it was more like you could do this or not. The browser will still understand what you're doing. And the browser will still try, right? Like the browser will still try, but... Or browser. I watched a lot of Paper Mario this weekend. I've got Bowser in the brain. Yo, Paper Mario is some weird stuff. Like, some weird stuff. Mario in general is weird, but it is like... Paper Mario is like unbelievably weird. Okay, anyways. Directly below the opening body tag, add an anchor tag that links to index.html with a relative path. It should say brown bear. Okay, so directly below the opening body tag, that's here, add an anchor tag. Yes. With that links to index.html with a relative path. So that's the ./index.html. That's the relative path. That says brown bear. Okay, let's see if it likes that. Perfect. Yes. Okay, under the link to index.html, add an anchor tag that links to About Me using a relative path. The link should say About Me. Notice that there is also another file in the code editor right here. aboutme.html. Click the link to make sure it works. Okay, so we're gonna add it. Equals, and it's a relative path, so we're gonna do ./aboutme.html. About me equals anchor tag. Okay, so we're gonna run it. Okay, cool. Liked it. Let's see. Oh, my name is Michael. Awesome. Awesome. Worked great. Okay, linking at will. You've probably visited websites where not all links were made up of text. Maybe the links you clicked on were images or some other form of content. Cool. So far we've added links that were made up only of text, like the following. Text-only links, however, would significantly decrease your flexibility as a web developer. Thankfully, HTML allows you to turn nearly any element into a link by wrapping that element with an anchor tag. With this technique, it is possible to turn images into links simply by wrapping the image element with an anchor element. Great. Right here. So in the example above, an image of a prickly pear has been turned into a link by wrapping the outside of the image tag, the image element, with an anchor element. Okay, so here you can see, here is the image element. That would just be what we would normally do on its own if we wanted an image. So what they mean by wrapping is that this is put inside an opening anchor tag and a closing anchor tag to make this image itself a link. Okay, so in index.html, transform the image on your page into a link by wrapping the image element with an anchor element. Set the target attribute so that the link opens in a new window. Use the same URL as before. Okay, so we're going to go to our image. So if you remember from last time, we put this image on here. So we're going to scroll down till we find it. There it is, right there. So it's going to be an anchor element. It wants us to link this page, and it wants us to add a target blank because it wants us to open, it wants the image to be able to open in a new window. And then we're going to add the closing anchor element tag after the image tag. Let's run it. Awesome. Okay, linking to the same page. At this point, we have all the content we want on our page. Since we have so much content, it doesn't all fit on the screen. Yeah, it just scrolls down like that. How do we make it easier for a user to jump to different portions of our page? When users visit our site, we want them to be able to click a link and have the page automatically scroll to a specific section. In order to link a target on the same page, we must give the target an ID like this. their IDs right there in those elements. Okay, so in the example, the P element is assigned an ID of top, and the H1 header element is assigned bottom. An ID can be added to most elements on a web page. An ID should be descriptive to make it easier to remember the purpose of a link. The target link is a string containing the pound character and the target element's ID. So basically this, right? If you want to link to the element that you have given the ID top to, this is how you would do it. Okay, so in the example above, the links to PID top and H1 ID bottom are embedded in an ordered list. These links appear in the browser as a numbered list of links. An ID is especially helpful for organizing content belonging to a div. Got it. Okay, so under the H1 element that says brown bear, create an unordered list with the following 3 list items. So that is this H1 element. Okay, so we're going to create an unordered list. If we remember from last time, it's a UL1. And then we have 3 list items, so I'm just going to, in advance, but I'm just going to make the 3 like list item, opening list item tag, closing list item tag, opening list item tag, closing list item tag, and then closing the unordered list tag. Okay, and here we have introduction, habitats, and media. Okay. Okay, so wrap the text of each list item in the unordered list in an anchor element. Each anchor tag should link to the corresponding div on the page. Okay, so you notice that these div have IDs now, right? This one's ID introduction. There's an ID for habitat and an ID for media that will take us. Actually, I should go in here. Okay, so like here in this div, you can see where my cursor is, right? Introduction right here. And if we scroll down to, there's habitat, div ID habitat, and then div ID media. So those have been added in for us, so we're going to link to them from the list. We're going to come back to list, and then, yeah, so we'll do A, H, R, E, F, and then, so when I check this example, it's the pound symbol and then the name, right? Yeah. Pound symbol introduction for this first one. Actually, I'm going to add a bunch of close anchor tags in advance. Perfect. Okay, so href pound habitat, and then href pound. There we go. Okay, let's run it and see. Awesome, it likes it. Let's see if it works. Let's click media here. Perfect, it scrolled us all the way down to media. Okay, next, whitespace. The rest of this lesson will focus on some tools developers use to make code easier to interpret. As the code in an HTML file grows, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep track of how elements are related. Programmers use 2 tools to visualize the relationship between elements, whitespace and indentation. Both tools take advantage of the fact that the position of elements in a browser is independent of the amount of whitespace or indentation in the index.html file. For example, if you wanted to increase the space between two paragraphs on your web page, you would not be able to accomplish this by adding space between the paragraph elements in the index.html file. So if we just went in here and did this a bunch of times, that would have no effect on what's displayed in the browser. The browser ignores white space in the HTML files when it renders the web page, so it can be used as a tool to make code easier to read and follow. Okay, so what makes the example below difficult to read? Yeah, you have to read the entire line to know what elements are present. Compare the example above, this one, to this one. This example is easy to read because each element is on its own line. While the first example required you to read the entire line of code to identify the elements, this example makes it easy to identify the body tag and two paragraphs. A browser renders both examples the same way. They'll both look like this. In the next exercise, you will learn how to use indentation to help visualize nested elements. Okay, so use whitespace to make the code more readable by putting each element on a line of its own. So body's there. We're going to move H1 to its own line. We're going to move the paragraph to its own line. And then we're going to move the body tag. Oh, actually, we'll leave it there because that lines up with that one. Okay. Perfect. Indentation. The second tool web developers use to make the structure of code easier to read is indentation. The spaces are inserted using the spacebar and tab, the space and tab bars on your keyboard. So the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, is responsible for maintaining the styling standards of HTML. At the time of writing, the W3C recommends 2 spaces of indentation when writing HTML code. Although your code will work without exactly 2 spaces, this standard is followed by the majority of professional web developers. Indentation is used to easily visualize which elements are nested within other elements. In the example above, paragraph 1 and the div tag are nested inside of the body tag, so they are indented 2 spaces. The paragraph 2 element is nested inside of the div tag, so it's indented an additional 2 spaces. Okay, so indent the code in index.html to match W3C standards. Okay, so this is inside the body tag, so 1, 2. This is inside the body tag, 1, 2. This paragraph is inside this div tag, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And this div one is 1, 2. Does that work? I wonder if it wants us to do this line too. No, it's good. It's happy. Perfect. Okay, comments. HTML files also allow you to add comments to your code. Comments begin with this and end with this. Any characters in between will be ignored by your browser. Including comments in your code is helpful for many reasons. They help you and others understand your code if you decide to come back and review it at a much later date. They allow you to experiment with new code without having to delete old code. In this example, the comment is used to denote that the following text makes up a particular section of the page. In the example above, a valid HTML element, a paragraph element, has been commented out. This practice is useful when there is code you want to experiment with or return to the future. Okay, so we're going to add a comment. So we're just going to copy this for a sec. And it says, feet, what do I need you for when I have wings to fly? So here we'll say, this is a quote, is the comment that we've decided to put. Perfect. Okay, so you now know all the basic elements and setup you need to structure an HTML web page. Amazing, and add different types of content. With the help of CSS, very soon you'll be creating beautiful websites. Awesome. While some tags have a very specific purpose, such as image and video tags, most tags are used to describe the content that they surround, which helps us modify and style our content later. There are seemingly infinite numbers of tags to use, many more than we've taught. Knowing when and how to use each one is based on how you want to describe the content of your HTML. Descriptive, well-chosen tags are one key to high-quality web development. A full list of available HTML tags can be found in Mozilla documentation. Okay, so let's review what you've learned this lesson. The doc-type HTML declaration should always be the first line of code in your HTML files. This lets the browser know what version of HTML to expect. The HTML element will contain all of your HTML code. Information about the web page, like the title, belongs within the head of the page. You can add a title to your web page by using the title element inside of the head. A web page's title appears in the browser tab. Anchor tags are used to link to internal pages, external pages, or content on the same page. You can create sections on a web page and jump to them using anchor tags and adding IDs to the elements you wish to jump to. Whitespace between HTML elements helps make code easier to read while not changing how the elements appear in the browser. Indentation also helps make code easier to read. It makes parent-child relationships visible. And comments are written in HTML using the following syntax. Take some time to edit the workspace you created and observe how it changes. Awesome. Up next. Okay, so we would do that if we were doing Academy Pro, which we're not. So our next lesson we do will be all about tables. All about tables. So awesome. Before we wrap up for the day, I wanted to make a note about comments. So this is going to be, if you remember, what we're doing here is we're learning HTML, and then we're going to learn Python, and then we're going to probably go into JavaScript or C or cascading style sheets. But an important thing to note is that comments are really important when you're coding. So they're important for yourself, they're important for us, because we may be knee-deep in code one day and really understand what we're doing, and then take a week and come back and just be like, what was I thinking? Where was I in the middle of this? Or even, months later, if you need to come back to a project or you need to reuse code for something. But comments are also extremely important for other people, because when you're coding, you're not always just coding for yourself. When people are going to look at your code anyways, if there's a developer who's interested in something that you've made and they want to see how you do it, they're going to peek at your code. So, you want them to be able to look and see what's going on. But also, too, if you're working on any sort of like open source project, like a project in which the code and the project is available, which happens so often in blockchain, in like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other projects, a lot of it is open source, and so you're going to be coding with the understanding that other people are going to come and develop on the work that you've done, and you want them to be able to read it, you want them to know what's going on. And so just get into the habit of adding comments. I'm going to try to remember this myself as we go through and build projects together, but add comments so people know what's going on. So it may not come so naturally as we assume it might, because there's like lots of different ways to do things, and so there will be a reason why you yourself picked the way that you want to do something, so you should communicate that to people in the comments, in the code. Is really important habit. This is something that I'm starting to feel really strongly about as I do more developing, not just for myself or my friends to play fun games together, but also like projects for other people to play and explore. So I really like that they have that chapter in there. Perfect. Okay, so we are 2/3 of the way through HTML, which is awesome. We will probably finish this up next time, and then we're going to get to the Python, and that's always a good time. So, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time on Ciphernoon.